What do I think about Nvidia won't be releasing any new graphics cards for gamers, RAMs increasing in price? Do you think in the future there will be less games? No, I think what will happen is I think that game developers will be forced to adapt to it. And I don't want to speak out of turn. I don't want to say things that aren't true, and I don't want to get people's hopes up. Two things can be true at the same time. I can, one, dislike the fact that tech is being massively inflated in price in order to be sold to and feed the absolutely insatiable need for AI. I dislike that. The fact that AI needs so much, and we are giving it so much by companies selling everything at inflated prices. That sucks for gamers. Owning a PC will be hard. We may even get to a point where owning a gaming PC becomes a thing of the past. Building your own PC might become incredibly difficult. And I don't like that. But let's look at a silver lining. And again, not defending, not running defense for the corporations, trying to find the silver lining. Does it mean that games will start to focus less on graphics? Does it mean that games will say, okay, well, we are limited in what graphical stuff we can add. Maybe we can focus on making the gameplay good instead. Will companies be forced to look and say, you know what, actually, the majority of our user base no longer has access to incredible graphics. Maybe now we need to make a game that can be run on slightly lower spec systems, but also works really well and is super smooth and fun to play. Maybe that will happen. Although, like you say, Hippo, that's a great point. With the price of silver, the silver lining is actually now also expensive. AAA gaming won't change, because AAA gaming, I don't think it quite understands what it's about anymore. I don't think people at the very top of AAA gaming play games. I think people at the top of AAA gaming make products, and then they wonder why people don't want to get excited for the next product. They're like, here is a game, which is a product, we will sell it to you. And then a year later, they're like, here is another product. And everyone else is like, we're still enjoying the first product. And they're like, you losers, you fools. You're not meant to get attached to these things. You're not meant to get emotionally invested. You're not meant to form bonds. You're meant to just consume product and enjoy it while it's there. And then when we make a new product, consume that product again. That's it. Considering this is Josh's chat, this is the most degen comment here. Okay, you are mildly inebriated. My goodness! Call the police. Yeah, people that make games at the very top echelons don't care about them being good games, they care about them being products. Almost all interesting and fun games were produced by a smaller I mean, big studios can still make good stuff. The thing is that the more people you add to something, the more bureaucracy you add, which means that decisions that would be fun suddenly become decisions of committee. And one of the worst things, I think if you've worked at any level of middle management, you'll understand this. One of the worst things about making a team bigger is that everyone on that team then needs to find a way to justify why they're on that team. Even people that should totally be able to sit back and go, you know what, I'm not involved in this. They think that if they do that too much, they will be voted out of their own team or fired, or they won't be doing anything. So I'm sure you've all worked with middle managers who change systems around for no other reason than the desire to say they've done something. The desire to say, yes, I did that, I changed that system. They're justifying their own paycheck. That's what they're doing. And I think that the larger a business or a larger a games company gets, the more people in that chain just feel the need to justify their own place within that chain by making completely pointless changes that they can then point to at the end of the year and said, well, I did this and revenue is up. What they did may not have had any direct effect on revenue, but if revenue does go up, then the thing that they did is important. If revenue does go down, then the thing that they did prevented it going down even more. That is the way that management works. So I think, unfortunately, what tends to happen, especially with when people say, you know, indie studios make better games than large studios, sometimes it's just because indie studios have a much simpler kind of chain of command. It's a much simpler. It's the idea that instead of doing this and this and this and this and this, the small indie studios can just say, right, this is going to be like 2 meetings. Whereas the big studios need to say, right, we need to get like 10 people on board with this, and none of them need to change anything. That's the kicker. Because I think that there probably are many, many talented people that work in big studios. I know that it's lovely to, I'm not defending the big studios, but I know that it's lovely and it's nice and it's full of hate to look at the big studios and go faceless, nameless entity. And when we get to the top of the studios, you know, when we get to like the CEOs and the owners and all that jazz, yeah, you know what? Probably uncaring to a degree. However, the developers, the artists, the people that are super passionate about it, I bet there's absolutely a ton of super talented people that work at these studios. For some, it's probably a dream job. For some, it's probably become a nightmare job. But I think that it has definitely become a bit of a dream job to them. And they are talented. They just don't get to show their talent, because when they show their talent to anyone, it's filtered through a layer of middle management. Bagley says, we don't feel the need to justify our job. We lose our job if we don't justify it. There's no choice if you prefer to feed your children. Yeah, absolutely. I get it. I'm not saying that you're an evil person for doing it. I'm saying that that system is not conducive to producing the best art. The system is conducive to producing the best art, which also maintains the system itself, which could, paradoxically, be harming the art it's producing. It's not that having this many people together is a bad way to run a business. It's a bad way to run a business that serves the consumer the best. Because every time a middle manager walks up to you and says, actually, no, I've got to do this, otherwise I starve. Okay, cool, I get it. But you have to understand that what you are doing is not necessarily improving the product. It is justifying your reason for being involved in the product. I get from a business point of view why it happens, but in a horrible, harsh way, I kind of care more about the end product than the process of getting there, if the process of getting there is full of bureaucracy and management. I think there are many talented people that work at these companies who could do incredible things. The problem is sometimes you're putting together 50 people who could do 5 different jobs, and you're making them do one job, and you end up with one job done slowly and badly, instead of 5 jobs done quickly and well. Yeah, the head of it hadn't even heard of Claire Obscure a few weeks ago. They're not gamers, they're business people. Yeah, absolutely, I get that. I totally get that. The people that make the big gaming decisions are not big gamers themselves. They're people that look at spreadsheets, look at charts, look at studies that are done, and say, this is going to be the most successful game because of the numbers. It's very rare that you'll find any kind of big company that's willing to take a risk on a hunch or a bet. What is the biggest difference today compared to 2004 to 2011? Movies and games had some golden era. I would say, that's a good question. I think that from 2004 to 2012 or 2011, if we had to talk culturally, I think that was the point where companies were still willing to risk with experimenting with new IPs and not necessarily relying on sequels and reboots and rehashes as much. Sequels and reboots have always been a thing. I'm not saying they've never existed before that. That's hyperbole. We don't need to go that far. But I still think it was an age where we could take more of a risk. I was your #1 content creator. Oh, thank you very much. If you could choose one MMO that's not RuneScape to play forever, what would it be? Otherland. But it doesn't exist anymore, so in my mind, it will always be perfect. I would play Otherland because Otherland was a perfect game, and you can't prove me wrong because you can't play it right now. Is this a Kit Boga stream? No, because I will redeem. I'm telling you right now, I straight up will redeem. I think that taking risks was easier when less money was spent on things. Like if a game cost £100,000 to make, taking a risk on it was, someone rich is going to do it. If a game costs $100 million to make, you're going to want to mitigate that risk as much as possible. And one of the things that I think I am seeing more and more is as the price tag to make art increases, the willingness to take a risk with that art decreases. Isn't that the benefit of AI? It will reduce the labor of making a big game. It depends, Terry. If you're reducing the labor by removing a job from a human, kind of sucks. If you're reducing the labor by taking something extremely monotonous and extremely boring that a human would do that they can be doing something better with, then yeah, I can see the benefit there. The old classic saying is, I would like AI to do all the boring, monotonous stuff while we as humans use that free time to produce more art and explore humanity. I don't want to give AI the time to produce art and explore humanity, which frees us up to do all the boring, monotonous stuff more. If we are going to have an automated system, why are we giving that system the ability and the time and the money and the focus to do the things that in theory that system should be freeing us up to do? But to go back to the idea of spending money on programs, correct me if you think I'm wrong on this, guys, sometimes I think the increasing budget for games is actually being spent on stuff that businesses care about more than gamers. I think it's to impress the executives. I think it's to impress the marketing people. I think it's to impress the winning awards people, not necessarily make a better game. Like at some point, you're going to have to admit that making your game's graphics better don't make the game better. At some point, you've got to kind of admit the fact that We are spending 100 million on these photorealistic graphics when we could be spending 10 million on stylized, which would be remembered better for longer. And the reason that we're going for photorealistic graphics is not because gamers say they want it, it's because boardroom executives want to be able to show it off. And that's been the case for years. A lot of gaming marketing and a lot of gaming designing is not done to impress the gamer. Yeah, that's why I hate procedural generation. Because more stuff doesn't mean more better. Look, we've made a game that's 1,000 square miles wide. Okay, cool, what's in it? The same 10 quests again and again and again. Okay, does it need to be 1,000 miles wide? No, but it is, which sucks. Have you seen the Twitter freakouts about indie studios succeeding without management? There are some people who benefit from oversight. There are some people who work really well if they are directed in the correct way, and that's what a good manager is there for, not to tell you off, but to help direct and focus your energy. A good manager doesn't sit there and say, I'm going to tell you off and make you feel bad for not doing it. They say, right, you've got great energy. What do you need from me to help you focus it? That's what I used to say when I was working in management. I would literally say to people, right, you know what you're doing, you are competent, but you and me both know you've got a tendency to wander. And it's my job to maximize productivity from you. So what do you need to do that? What can I give you which you know will help you? And we would then have those kind of conversations. And there are some people as well who can work perfectly fine with no oversight. There are some people who will turn up to work, do the best job they can, and go home. And someone doesn't need to sit in an office and make sure that they're doing that. But one of the reasons that so many managers wanted the return to work thing, to physically get back into the office, was because they just don't think people are capable of doing that. And I think one of the reasons that managers don't think people are capable of doing that is because if they were truly honest with themselves, they're not capable of doing that either. What would I do if my gaming friends switched to a new game that I do not like? Force yourself to do something that you're not fully enjoying and keep playing, or keep playing the game you're playing right now, giving up on the social aspect. I'd just talk to my friend, and I'd probably understand that my friendship with them either is or isn't limited to the game. If they are a true friend, then they can just come and play the game with me for a bit, and then I can play the game with them for a bit, and then we can play another game together for a while. If it's, you must play this one game forever, then I would play the game that I enjoy the most. Is the choice exclusive? Yeah, just obviously fight to the death. That's the only possible solution at that point. Josh, when's Subnautica? I'm terrified of the underwater, so never. So many managers don't understand a big part of their job is giving their team what they need, not telling their team what they need. I'm new to WoW. Which version of WoW is this? This is the WoW Classic Anniversary Edition, the Burning Crusade expansion pack currently. So talking about management styles in general, I truly think a good manager is there to make a team better. And if a good manager doesn't make a team better, sometimes it's the manager's job to admit, right, my team can exist without me. And you know what? That's a great thing. That's a fantastic thing. What do I need to maximize my stream output? Fewer migraines and possibly more water. That might be a thing that I need to go for. So I'm going to start drinking more water. I've got a cup of tea with me. Why make a team better? They will just end up replacing you. Brain Juice, that's a good point. The problem is that if everyone had that attitude, nothing would ever get done. Sometimes there is the irony that self-sustaining and self-preservation actually rely on you making systems actively worse without you there. That's a sucky thing to realize. But there are many people, many managers, I've met them, I've worked with them. And when you realize that what they are doing is they are actively setting up systems that without them specifically will fail. And that is a point where you realize these managers aren't trying to make the team better. They're trying to sabotage the team in a way that can only be undone when they are there, which sucks. That really sucks. I mean, the best thing a manager can do is effectively make themselves irrelevant, which itself is an ironic part of the job.